get the record going. So just know that it's recording. Again, if you have the ability, please turn on your camera. That'd be fantastic. Additionally, for those that are here, so we can kind of read the room as well, can you just state what class year you are, or not your graduating year particularly, but if you're P4, P3, P2, P1, just so we get an idea of the audience that we're addressing. So we want to make sure everybody is in the know of how this presentation specifically can help you out for Friday. So in the chat, if you could, just let us know what year you are. All right, a couple P1s, P2s, P3s, P4s, P2. All right, so some good stuff here. Hopefully we get a couple more people as we trickle in after 7 p.m.
I apologize in advance for the glare off of my bald head. I'm used to working in the sunlight, so like the natural light typically. So now I got this big overhead light, and it's not. I apologize, people. I'm sorry.
All right, this is going to be awesome. So we have a couple of responses. Good amount of P1s are with us, a couple P4s, a couple P2s, P3 as well. So we got a little bit of mix of everybody. So this presentation specifically, this is a great one to be going to, because what we're going to do is we're going to help you out in navigating what's going to come on Friday and what's going to be coming in the future career fair residency showcases. So, that being said, if you have questions, it's great to ask at any given moment, right? We want you to be as prepared as possible and understanding what your role and responsibilities are during the career fair. We'll talk about networking. We'll go over some basic CV and resume preparation. And otherwise, again, if you have a question, please type it in chat. You can always use the raise your hand function and we'll be able to address appropriately. But why don't we get started? So I'll turn it over to Ryan. Ryan, if you want to introduce yourself, I think it'd be a great way to start.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Ryan Stilgaitis. I'm the campus director for career development on the Florham campus. And I've been working with the School of Pharmacy for, it feels like as long as I could remember. I've been with FDU for 10 years and I started working with the School of Pharmacy soon after that. So I, work with students, and I know many of you on here tonight already, which is awesome. It shows me that hopefully I'm doing a good job in supporting you guys. And that's what I'm here to do tonight. I want to make sure that you guys are as prepared as possible, that you can present yourselves in the best way possible, and that you know how to approach this in the best way possible, because this is the virtual world of networking and recruiting that we're living in now. So we hope to get you guys off on the right foot.
All right, fantastic. So Ryan, where do we want to start?
Okay. I don't know. Do you want to just, do you want me to go right into my thing, or do you want to start by giving a kind of an overview of what it's actually going to look like virtually? Because to me, one of the things that and that you and I had discussed are some of the strategies that the students should really be thinking about how they should approach it. It's not, it's not the in-person thing where you're going to walk into what rooms are those that are typically used, the 2 conjoining rooms there. Like it's not like that this year, it's different. So I don't know if we want to give a little lay of the land so people can visualize it.
Why don't I just give everybody an idea of what to expect for Friday specifically? So as you might all know, we're in kind of a midst of a pandemic where we actually can't have in-person interactions. And what that does is that really changes the way that you want to be able to project yourself, especially when you have interactions in a virtual setting, right? So some of the biggest things you need to consider are how it's going to be run, what platforms, devices, making sure all the little details are well ahead of time, and then continuing on when you actually go to the day itself, understanding how to navigate the actual career fair. For example, our career fair and residency showcase, we're running it through Zoom, right? And what we're doing is in our session specifically, we're hosting it under one link, whereas there was another event that happened pretty recently that was multiple links per different organization that was attending. We're going to be having breakout rooms, and you being a student will have the accessibility to jump between any breakout room that you want to attend. Those breakout rooms are going to be for the companies. They're going to be 4-hour-long spans where they're kind of in the know that they have the ability to operate however they want to in that specific space. But they do know that students will have the ability to pop in and pop out at leisure. So it might be a little bit awkward in terms of if you just want to come into a room and they're midway in a conversation with somebody, but that doesn't mean leave, right? That doesn't mean leave right away. What you want to do is you kind of want to just take it in, and when it's appropriate, they either address you or you're going to have an opportunity to talk to them. That's probably your best bet. Secondarily, you can look at the breakout rooms itself and see how many participants are in a room. So if you find a room with little to no people at all, other than the presenters, of course, that might be a great opportunity for you to go and ask questions and introduce yourself and get more information. So that's kind of the basic layout of what ours is going to be. We're going to have a little bit of extra things, but we'll have a student waiting room. So if you need to just want to stay in your Zoom, but you want to just go to a room and turn your camera off, go do something real quick, that'll be a staging area. We'll also have a feature presentation portion of it. So if maybe you don't feel comfortable, so for example, our P1s that are going to be in attendance, you might not yet feel comfortable going and meeting with an organization. What this feature presentation room is going to be, it's going to be highlighting a variety of different groups. So we have one career field that's going to be presenting, a couple fellowships that are going to be presenting, and a couple residencies as well. So there'll be 10-minute presentations over, of course, of 15-minute periods throughout the day. So your best bet, if you don't know where to go or where to start, you want to attend the feature presentation room. That's probably going to be where you can get the most information, where you might be able to feel the most comfortable in making use of your time, especially, like I said, if you're a P1 or P2. P3s, P4s, you might know exactly kind of what career aspirations you're going into right away. So you might map and outline who you want to attend and when you want to attend. Now, what you all have gotten from me are a couple emails. In those emails, I have broken down the presentation list of who's going to be presenting what. I've also talked about too which companies are coming. So if you haven't gotten that email, please check. It's pretty important. So
that's important. So that's kind of why I wanted Justin to give his introduction about this sort of stuff, because that is, the most important information that you guys can have right now is utilizing that list that Justin has sent out, doing your research now, and now knowing what Justin has just mentioned, understanding what strategy you want to implement. Do you want to go to the feature presentation, or are you going to move right on from that? So I just think there's a lot to think about. So I think first things first is for you all to just have a mindset and have a game plan really of what you want to do, just like you would in person. It's just a little bit different right now. Right. So I don't know. Do you want to add anything further than the logistics that you just talked about?
Just like quick in the chat, if you could just let me know if you've ever attended a career fair. It could even be the one that we host in the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. If you've ever attended a career fair in the past, just please let us know. Just, you can type yes in chat if you can. I just kind of want to see. Because again, the in-person career fair experience we will talk about to a degree. There's a lot of yeses coming in.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm like, Justin, me. Come on, man.
So we'll address a lot of the majority of the differences between, again, what you might do in person and how it's going to be more virtually.
Yeah. Cool. So do you want me to go into some of my stuff?
Yeah, let's go into it. And then again, I can kind of, piggyback.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you guys for having me here and allowing me to talk about some of these things. I think Justin just gave a great kind of breakdown of how the day is going to go and what you guys need to think about. And in all honesty, that is one of the most important things to just at least get yourself settled with, is understanding who you're going to meet with, how you're going to handle those things. And like Justin said, we need to touch on some of those specifics, but that's always number one on my list. And I do want to let you guys know, I have some slides, some PowerPoint slides. I may or may not use them. For the most point, I think I know a lot of you on here. And you guys know that I just like to talk, and I'm going to share my knowledge and try to talk through as many things that can make you guys stand out and make you have a successful day on Friday. And I should also mention, before I forget, I assume we'll probably do so at the end, but I know we'll be talking a lot. I will be available on Friday morning. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be mentioning it. Is it for anybody specific, or is it for everybody? I forget.
No, it's for everybody. I made everybody aware. Okay. And so with that, just so everybody does know, normally Ryan comes in and he meets with our P4 students. What he's going to do with his services on Friday is he's going to open up his Zoom room from 9 to noon. That being said, it's not by appointment, it's by drop-in. So there's going to be a waiting room enabled. It's going to be quick, and I mean, pretty brief sessions, not
Yeah.
full on breakdowns. Because if there's a lot of work to be done, you probably have to go see Ryan afterwards,
Yeah.
meaning make an appointment.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, if you have any quick questions about the day, about interviewing, maybe just a quick first glance at a resume or a CV, Ryan's services will be available. So
Yeah,
making sure
definitely.
everybody knows, yep, on that Friday from 9 to noon, that link, it's on RX Engage and a separate event that's listed on the day of the 6th. And as well, it's in the email that I did send with where to go and how to access.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to mention that before I forgot, because what I'm going to go into now and what I'm going to talk about now are a lot of different things that I think typically generate interest in, oh, well, I need to do something about this. I need to talk to Ryan, or, this or that. So I will be available on Friday. But yeah, if it's anything major, that's probably calling for an appointment, and I can certainly give you guys that information. I think through RX Engage, actually, the information to schedule an appointment is in there. You can find it's through Handshake. So all of my schedule and my appointment availability is in Handshake, which should be listed in RX Engage. And I think Justin is nodding along.
Yes, it's in there. What I'll do is I'll send another email reminder to access you. Yep.
And what I can say, I know that if there's like a flood of people that are looking for appointments this week, it's probably pretty full already. So Friday morning would be a good time for sure. And then any other open times, anybody's, certainly can snag them up. But that's how you would do that. So I wanted to mention that up front, because I think what I typically talk about, I think it opens up people to think about the way they either have their CV formatted or the way they're going to talk about themselves. And they're like, oh, wow, I actually need to work on this. So hopefully I can give you some things that you can at least think about on your own, and that maybe we can discuss briefly on Friday morning. So yeah, so the number one thing that I would say is just, kind of going off of what Justin just mentioned, is making sure, if you have the list of every company and organization that will be there, you should be researching every single one. There should be no reason that you shouldn't have a list going of your number one priorities of who you want to meet with, right? So I think when I always think of events like this, it's needing to make it as stress-free as possible for you. Now, you guys all know how competitive it is. You guys all know how, much stress that an event like this can bring on. Everyone has been there in person. You know how crazy it gets in there, right? I mean, the candy and all the goodies only go so far. It's still a scary environment sometimes. And virtual is going to really be no different. So when Justin was kind of talking about, well, we'll talk about the differences between virtual and in person, the first thing I want to say is, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a huge difference, or a few huge differences, but a lot of it stays the same. Like, you guys need to do your research. You need to know, who you want to meet with, so you can make the most of that time. So the time slots are open from 10 to 2 p.m. Correct, Justin? That's
So yeah, company
open time.
availability will be from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. So there'll
Right.
be 4-hour spans.
So mapping out accordingly, who you guys want to meet with. And then, as Justin said, having a plan in action to say to yourself, okay, well, if there's 10 people in the room, these are the things that this is kind of the conversational portion to it, because I can't tell you specifically how to act in this scenario. But, if I'm moving through this process logically, and I think to myself, okay, well, I need to research all these companies and organizations that are going to be there so I can map out my day. Okay, great. Number one. Number two, I'm going to go into these breakout rooms. Now, what do I do when I'm in there? What happens? Okay, well, are there 10 people in there, or are there 0 people in there? If there's 10 people in there, what do I do? Do I just sit back for a minute? Like Justin said, like, sit back for a minute, let that conversation continue, and then try to interject where you see fit. But it's not just, kind of barging in, because it's still like, I guess you kind of have to picture almost like the table at the typical in-person one, that there still would be a line and everything like that. So you still have to keep that going, obviously. But I do want to tell you that when there are group presentations and things like this, and especially virtually, it can be much harder to speak up. And I don't want to tell you to go out and, interrupt somebody or try to interject yourself where you really shouldn't be. But you don't also want to get kind of washed away by everybody else in the group. You need to find a way to make yourself stand out. So it really depends. But I think somehow, some way you need to make yourself known. So that's the kind of the second thing. And as far as, I think follow-up will become very big with this. So getting their contact information, ensuring that you can, send them a thank you. Is that something that will be possible, Justin? The ability to get their contact info and send thank yous?
Yeah. So one of the things too is in the document that I sent that had the table of contents, they're direct.
There was a table of contents.
Yeah,
Now I understand.
What you can do is you can actually go to the page of the
Good.
the page of interest, right? The organization of interest. Click onto it, and I did add what contacts they had. What I'm going to do is I'm going to update that at the end of the Career Fair and Residency Showcase to make sure that all the individuals that they had in each room were as updated as possible. So if there's a company and an organization that you enjoyed meeting with, and you want to know how to follow up and who to follow up with, the best thing you can do is go back to that kind of document as a reference sheet and say, okay, Jennifer, I met with Jennifer. I want to follow up on, the organization, let's just say Bayer. You can just follow up with that email that's in there so you know who to contact. What I would recommend too is, again, in the virtual setting, it's different. You won't have the ability to pass out business cards, right? Or take a business card of the individuals. So it doesn't hurt to ask what's the best way that I can contact you? What's the best way to follow up? Those are the questions that you should be encouraging yourself to ask throughout this process, because again, it's different. It's not as normal as, here, take my card, reach out to me when you can, or asking yourself, do you have a business card that I can, hold on to?
Right.
So you kind of have to make those connection points yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the exact reason I was bringing it up is, you're not going to be able to walk up to that table and at the end of that nice conversation that you have, either hand that business card or your resume. So there needs to be some way to gather that information and follow up with them. So follow up will become very important. Follow up is always important to me. Anybody that has spoken with me, everyone knows that I think the follow-up is what makes students stand out many times, is that there are a lot of students that don't take the time to write a simple thank you and say, hey, thanks for taking 4 hours out of your day and spending it with the FDU students. We're really grateful for it. That can go a long way. And I guarantee you that I don't even know how many people are on here tonight, 23. So 23 of you heard it, but I don't think everyone's going to be doing that. So think about the things, and that this is the common theme that you will hear probably from here on out, from me at least, is you need to think of the things that will make you stand out, especially in this virtual world right now. And it's not just personal traits about yourself, right? We'll talk about that too. But what I mean is, okay, well, if you follow up with them and send them a nice thank you for taking time out of their day, and you mention something specific from your conversation with them, it just opens it up, and it gives you that ability to form that relationship, because it's hard right now. We're zoomed out, right? We're on Zoom all day. They're going to be spending their time on Zoom the entire day. It's a little bit harder I shouldn't even say a little bit. It's a lot harder to get to know people through Zoom. So I think now it's just amplified that we need to do all these things right. And it all comes back to the very beginning of planning your day out accordingly, making sure that you can make the most of it. So that's why that was discussed early on like that. As far as some of the basics, I mean, obviously, I don't think any of you wouldn't, but you need to dress appropriately, white coat or, something, interview attire, basically.
Yep.
So dress.
Yeah, one of the things is, you have the option to wear your white coat, which I think it's again, it could bring it all together, but you want to be as professional and presentable as possible.
Right.
So with that, just know what's in view and what's in frame, not only with your professional attire, but Ryan, I don't know if you were going to talk about what's behind you as well.
Yeah.
Zoom backgrounds are something that you may want to look into and may want to consider.
You do. I think you do. And it's, it's something that, this is such a different ball game now, right? Like, you've never really had to consider this. I mean, we've been doing virtual interviews and things like that for years, but it's now you really have to consider those things. So Yeah, I would try to do a virtual background. I mean, I still need to talk about all the basics. Like, you need to make sure you have a good internet connection, for Chrome, for Zoom, you need to make sure that, and I know you guys are using it all the time, but you just need to double check everything before a day like this, because it's a big event. It's several hours of your day that you're going to be spending. So you don't want anything to go wrong. And you just want to be prepared for it. So did you
Yeah,
want to say something, Justin?
yeah, I did. And one of the things too is like I will make sure I will send a couple things out obviously before Friday. We want to make sure that your Zoom is at this is going to be again a little nuanced thing, but we want your Zoom to be the latest version possible, so that way it allows the best ability to be transitioning between breakout rooms.
This guy's good. I like it.
No, trust me, I've been thinking of everything.
He's thinking of everything. Yep. No, that's and you have to. We held a career fair not through Zoom, but it's really important to pick up on the technical aspects now because of the world we're living in. So that's really important. This sounds silly, but have your camera on. If you're in a room and you go into and I don't know if maybe there's different advice that you guys have given them for presentations and things, but you want to be seen, you want to be known, you want to seem real. So if you go into a presentation, even if there's 10 other people there right now, I mean, not a huge deal. I wish you guys all had your cameras on. But during these, you always have to have it on. But yeah, I would definitely look into the virtual backgrounds. FDU has them on the website. If you just look up Zoom backgrounds, there's downloadable, all the one that I'm using, everything. Does school pharmacy have any specifically?
So we're in the process of building them
Okay.
out, so everybody does know. Just to piggyback off kind of what Ryan just said, with the Zoom backgrounds, again, I will send you kind of like a checklist of making sure that your technology is up to date with that. Another piece of advice I'd mention too, again, we want your camera on as much as possible when you're interacting with different organizations, right? You want to seem real, you want to seem human. Otherwise, if your name's just off and you're just speaking to them, it might be a little bit harder. So what does that mean for you? That means you're going to have to be in an area, hopefully, of your house, your apartment, and whoever you may be with, whether it be, relatives, friends, in the same shared space that you're in, just try to make it as, quiet as possible. So that way there's no distracting noises behind you. I know that kind of might be hard given, where you are, and I totally understand that. It's just something that you kind of want to consider. Additionally, too, one of the great features about Zoom is if you're able to upload a professional photo of yourself, right? Whether it's your white coat photo, you can do that as a placeholder. So if you, for whatever reason, you didn't turn your camera off, there's still a picture of you available. So I know I see a
few tonight. Yep.
It's just a great thing. If you just go to fdu.zoom.us, like on a laptop, you can do it from your profile page. So for example, if I turn my camera off, this is my headshot that is projecting. It's just something that you may want to do and may want to consider.
I 100% agree. Yeah. I mean, but the reason I interject here is like, these are the little things. Like, these are the little things that you really do need to think about. And I think a lot of people that work with me see that I always pick up on little things. And this is one of them. Like, if you're the person with just the white name going across the screen, no thanks. You know what I mean? Like, this shows me something. So it's the little things along the way.
Yep. I was going to mention too, and because this actually was brought up. So if you guys have questions throughout, message me privately, message Ryan privately. These are all things that you're able to do. I've got a couple questions. So I will address them quickly as they've come in to me.
Go for it.
One question was, are we going to have one-on-one times with the companies, or is it going to be kind of a general conversation? So there's no specific breakout rooms. If a company, for whatever reason wanted to continue the conversation in private, they could provide you a separate video conferencing link to some other platform, another Zoom that's not necessarily ours. That's a-okay. You might have those one-on-one conversations then. Otherwise, the conversations to be had are most likely going to be with them in a room where someone else could pop in. I know it's not as kind of intimate in terms of just being able to kind of communicate with one another.
It could be even more intimate though. Think about it. Like, if there is no one in that room at that time, what other chance do you have to have a completely quiet conversation with somebody at this fair? You don't, because even if you had a open table where there was no line at the fair, there would still be a ton of noise and people walking around you. So it could go both ways,
And I got another, that's a great point too, right? So it could go both ways. There might be organizations, and for any of us that's ever been to a recruiting event, Ryan, myself, you'll know that sometimes you'll be in an area for hours and only one person will show up and talk to you, right? So you can make a lasting impact with the conversations that you have.
Sure can.
Another question that was brought up too is once again about professional attire, what counts. So what I would recommend is remember what you wore to interview day, right? That's probably your best bet in terms of how you should approach this. You should approach it like you're doing interviews. If you want to wear your white coat, make sure it's professional attire underneath the white coat itself, not just a polo. Make sure that it's appropriate. Again, I'm going to reference your interview days as the attire that's recommended to be wearing during these conversations. So again, if you have any questions, message us privately, myself or Ryan, and we'll be able to interject and respond when appropriate.
Definitely. So those are just some of the basics to really keep in mind, because if you can't get those things straight, then the rest of it is kind of lost. Okay, let me just see where I am here. Okay, so the next two things that I want to talk about, and many of you have heard me talk about this, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I need to mention your CV, your resume, whatever document you're going to be using. If you do have the opportunity to share it with somebody, I mean, maybe you're in a one-on-one conversation with them and they say, hey, could you email it to me real quick? Or could you send it along? Can you attach it as a file in the Zoom breakout room? Maybe that happens, who knows? But nevertheless, you still need to have, at least for follow-up purposes, your CV should be flawless, spotless, ready to go. Many of you I know I've worked with already, and I hope that anyone I work with comes out with a flawless CV, but there's not, I give whole presentations on CVs. I dedicate full hours to CVs and more, but what I can simply tell you is that it needs to be the perfect document that you have. And I literally mean that. It needs to be perfect from top to bottom. There should not be any errors on it. And the reason I focus on this right now is, number one, I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about your CV, but number two, it is still what I see. It is still errors and things of that nature that I see that will hold you guys back. So I don't want that to happen. I want to make sure it's perfect. So when I say perfect, I mean fonts all match up. Like I shouldn't. And for those of you that have heard my CV presentations, I know you've heard this, but I need to take a few minutes to mention it because it's just so important. A lot of times what people have is their CVs are running documents, so they end up copying and pasting things in. So there becomes different fonts are in there, different font sizes and different sections. Sometimes bullet points don't line up and they kind of zigzag down the page. Dates don't line up and they zigzag down the page. Instead of having bullet points for your descriptions underneath experiences, you have big blobs of paragraphs. There's so many different things that, the spacing is all off. There's multiple spaces between some sections. There's 0 spaces between other sections. You have a 2-page CV with 2 lines on the 3rd page. That's all, those are all things that you just really, really need to look out for. You need to be the document that you hand out. You need to be the most proud of it. So I don't want to go into great depth on the basics of CVs or anything like that. I've worked with a lot of you on it actually, but I just want to reiterate how important it is because at some point you will be either sending it to them or somebody else soon. You're going to be applying to something. I know you will. So it needs to be perfect. There's no getting around it, and you need to spend time on it. It can't be thrown together. So yeah, that's kind of that with the CV. Does anyone have any specific questions on CVs? I know, like I said, I mean, I could do a whole session on CVs, but I want to talk about other stuff too.
Yeah, if you have any questions about CVs, go ahead. You can ask them in chat. That'd be great. In the meantime, I just want to know as well, who here, you can type in chat for me. That'd be fantastic. Who here has a ready to send CV? If you do, if you can type yes in chat, that'd be fantastic.
I see.
Or give us a thumbs up.
I was gonna say they're better. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple.
Everyone that I've met with better have good CVs, guys. Come on.
Again, this a career fair and residency showcase. Sorry if you hear my dog barking. It's a wonderful way again to quick distribute.
Yeah.
And I know Ryan will address elevator pitches a little bit later. I think that'd be a good thing to do.
Next on my list.
Yeah. But one of the things I want to mention as well. So a little nuance about Zoom. So sending files, right? again, in chat, if you can, who's ever sent a file via Zoom? If anybody has, just say yes, because I highly doubt that you have. It's a little bit different, right? It's a little bit interesting. So it's one of the harder things, I would say, to kind of understand if it's been successful. It's strange in the fact that it's not your, typical like upload, download, specifically when web links are involved. Right. So someone's sending me a couple things right now, which are great things. They're ready to go. They're ready to roll. And so I'll do it as an example. I'll post something. It's actually a pretty big file. I wonder if it'll go, because this is I'm uploading it right now. This is the brochure that I was kind of talking about, the one that we developed for all the companies. So when an organization asks, like, hey, do you have your CV? It'd be awesome to instantaneously just say, yep, I can, post it in chat if you'd like, so you can download it. But you have to make sure the formatting's right. So Ryan has mentioned before too, with the formatting being perfect, make sure that your CV is exactly how you had created it when it's in Word or a Google document, and then you save it to a PDF, because PDF is the best way to kind of transfer that from your laptop or device to the individual that you're supposed to be giving it to. Normally in person, it'd be great to hand them out. We could always talk about like how to do that. But when it's online, you want to make sure that it's perfect, ready to go, easily downloaded, something that the organizations won't fumble trying to have access to. So it's a great way to kind of, pass it along. Again, while we have this moment right now, does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns about CVs?
I would also say that, on top of the CVs, you guys should all have your LinkedIn profiles ready to go, because that's an easy link that you can share via chat to say, hey, and on top of that, having a personalized link for your LinkedIn profile. So when you click on the little pencil icon next to it shows you your link, your public URL. You can personalize that. So, mine is linkedin.com/in/Ryan Stelgaitis. It used to be linkedin.com/in/Ryan Stelgaitis 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30, 29, 56. So you don't want that, because that looks silly. But what you can do is you could have, if your LinkedIn profile is good, that's a whole nother thing though. You got to get your LinkedIn profile looking good.
So I haven't seen any questions come on, so we'll continue to power through. But again, if anybody does, just message us. We'll be happy to address them.
Cool. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the elevator pitches just mentioned. And let me see, do I even want to bring up anything? I don't think so. So here's what I will tell you. The elevator pitch is the most important thing that you can think about as far as marketing yourself and selling yourself to a potential employer, residency, whatever it might be. So what I want you all to do is, I need you to think about, even before thinking about the elevator pitch, I need you to think about what makes you stand out. Simple. I don't need anybody to answer me, but I need you to think about it. I need you to think about what makes you stand out. It's typically the question that people can't answer for me. It's a very hard question. It's not an easy one to go about, but I need you to think about what makes you stand out, because that needs to become one of the key points, or excuse me, that needs to become the key point in your elevator pitch. And then there's going to be other things that surround that, right? But I need all of you, and I need you to always do this. You need to always think about what makes you stand out, because guess what? And I always say this, I say this in every presentation, but it always makes sense to me. I tell everyone, I say, guess what? Like, you all do 2 IPPs, you all do 8 APPs. So what is it? And yes, they're all different. Like, you guys all bring a different thing to the table, but what are those things that make you different? Why should I select you for a residency, a fellowship, whatever it might be? Why should you be the one selected over that next person? It's hard to do that when you see people that, have gone through very similar experiences. So you need to find a way to make yourself stand out. So as I'm talking about the elevator pitch, I just want you guys to think about, and after tonight, I want you to continue to think about what makes you stand out, because I think on every appointment that I go on, typically I ask, what is it that makes you stand out? What makes you different from the 70 other or 90 other this year students that are in your P1, P2, P3, whatever it is class? And more often than not, it's hard to get an answer, and that's not good. So you need to know what makes you stand out. So you really have to think about that. And as far as your elevator pitch goes, I'll give you a secret here for the most part. It's the same answer. It's the same content for the following: your elevator pitch, tell me about yourself, and why should we hire you? So like those, and some people will probably tell you differently, but I really don't think so, because your elevator pitch should cover a very nice summary about you. It should always be tailored to the person you're talking to the person that you're talking to. So it should be telling them about yourself. And in the end, it should be telling them some of the most important things about you. And hopefully that one thing that really makes you stand out. So it should be telling them why they should hire you. So you have all these questions that come up through interview processes and things like that. And guess what? The only thing they ever want to know is, why should we select you? Why should we hire you? Why should we pick you? Why are you different than everybody else? So it's like, don't overthink it. So everyone always wants to wonder what they're going to ask. So if you just have a solid elevator pitch prepared and you know a lot about yourself, just that right there is going to take you very far. So, I think just thinking about your elevator pitch is going to be 30 to 60 seconds, maybe longer if you can tell they're kind of going along with it and they're really interested in what you're saying. But you need to ask yourself, like, what is the number one, what's the logical flow of my story? So everyone has a story. You need to put it together and tell it to them in a way that makes sense for them. So what's the logical flow of my story, my personal story, that I want to tell them, and what details do I want to include in that? You have to pick and choose. You can't include everything. So what's the story I want to tell? What's that main point that I want them to remember about me? Because the goal hopefully is to get a conversation continuing afterwards, like Justin has mentioned a few times. Like, that's what you want, right? You want them to hopefully continue that offline or on another another video platform or something like that. So that's really what you need to think about. And the last thing I'll say about the elevator pitch is, this needs to be conversational and it needs to come out naturally. So the one thing I will tell you not to do is, do not write up your elevator pitch. Do not, take time to literally type out your elevator pitch. And maybe that will work for some of you. So I shouldn't just say don't do it, because maybe you work like that. But in my experience, what I found is that if you type up your elevator pitch, you end up rehearsing it and it ends up coming out, I am Ryan Stelgaitis. It ends up coming out robotic because you rehearsed it. So we don't want that. So my thought would be, come up with a list of logical bullet points of pieces of information about yourself that you want to discuss during that elevator pitch. Don't worry about how it sounds yet. Just come up with a logical flow of bullet points. I'm currently a Doctor of Pharmacy candidate. Prior to that, I pursued my Bachelor of Science in Biology, followed by my Master of Science in Biomedical Engineering. In between that, and then you start intertwining things together. You start telling the story, but first and foremost, you need to find out logically where do you want to take them with the story. And I'm going to give you an example in a minute. And what are the key pieces that you want to mention throughout it. So I'm not going to go in depth on my elevator pitch, but I do want to give you a very simple elevator pitch in my style. I'm not going to go crazy with it. I'm going to do a very short version of it, actually. But what it will do and what it will show you is how I operate mine is I always mention who I currently am, and this will make sense when I do it. I mention who I currently am, and then I take them all the way back to the beginning, and then I bring them all the way back up to the present. So check it out. My name is Ryan Stelgaitis. I'm the current campus director of career development for Fairleigh Dickinson University, and I've been here for 10 years. I received my bachelor's degree from Rutgers University in communication, and following that, I worked for 2 years in sales and marketing, where I gained some great skills. But I realized I didn't want to work in sales anymore, and I wanted to work to help students that went through some of the same struggles I did in my higher education experience. So I went back to Rutgers and I got my Master of Education in College Student Affairs. And then from there, I began my journey at FDU. I've been working here for 10 years, where I've taught classes, worked in the Career Development Center, advised groups on campus, worked with orientation, and done a million other things, and worked with the School of Pharmacy. Blah, 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 blah. You guys get the picture, right? So I've taken you, I said, here's who I am now. I started to just let you know, I set the table, right? I said, here's who I am now. Here's what you're going to get, basically. Let me take you back. And the reason I would do that, and you have to make sure you do this for yourself, the reason I do that is my hope in my conversation with them, and this is for me personally, I go back and I tell, I bring them back to my undergraduate. And the reason I do that is I have a story to tell. And typically when I get into a conversation with them, I end up talking about my reason for doing what I do now. My reason for doing what I do now is that I almost failed out of Rutgers. So I don't open up with that, but the reason my elevator pitch contains me, my undergraduate, which some may say, well, do you even really need to talk about that? Well, I do. I do because it's important to me, because it's part of my story. It's part of why I'm here. It's part of why I'm successful, and it's part of why I'm different. So it allows me to open up a whole nother story about myself while still giving them the main points about me. And there would have been other details that I would include in there, but like I said, I didn't want to go overboard for you guys. But I would have mentioned that when I was in grad school, I worked at a private university, I worked at an Ivy League school, I worked at a technical institute. So I got all different experiences. So I would have shown them. So I'm trying to think like I need to showcase all these great things about me really quickly and concisely for them. So that's the typical format that I go for. So you don't need to follow it exactly, but somehow you need to ask yourself, like, what's most important about me, and what is the logical flow that I can go through? That's the way I go through it, but you guys need to come up with it on your own. But at the end of the day, here's the final thing, the actual final thing I'll say about elevator pitches is picture exactly what it is, an elevator pitch, right? You get into an elevator with somebody, you have to go up to, let's say, a high level floor. So you have 30 to 60 seconds. And then the elevator door opens and they walk away. And that conversation is over. What you need to ask yourself is, are you happy with what you just said to them? That's all you need to worry about. Nothing else matters, right? Like, just think back to that conversation and are you happy with it? Can you say, I have a feeling they're going to call me? Or are you going to say, man, I really wish I mentioned this or that or the other thing? Don't leave yourself wanting to mention those things. Find a way to intertwine them. And that's only going to come from preparation and knowing what's important. So that's my spiel on elevator pitches.
And really well said, Ryan. I couldn't agree with, more with anything that you said. It was fantastic. One of the things too is, you are all unique. I know a lot of the
very much so
in this room, right? Your resumes, again, they're going to look pretty consistent to the one that's going to come before you and after you, right? So, the interpersonal communication skills that you have developed, hopefully are continuing to develop, those are going to come into play big time when you're interacting with different organizations. Tell your story, show your personality, show who you are, make it memorable. Those are the little things that in your elevator pitch, for example, the organization is going to go back and be like, Ryan, that's the one who, started his time at Rutgers and, had the experiences that he's, gone through within sales in the beginning, right? So there's little nuances that you're going to be able to kind of hint about yourselves that are going to prompt the individual to, when they see your name in an email, be like, oh yeah, that was a person that said this or that.
And be specific. I always tell people, mention company names, mention places, because what it does is it cements it in somebody's head, and they're able to visualize it better. You're literally painting the picture for them. You're painting a picture for them. You're giving them this visualization so that, like Justin said, when they go back afterwards, after a long day, they can go back and remember you better. So that's what it comes all down to, is how much are they going to remember you?
Yeah, I'm under the assumption that you all want a job when you graduate, right? You have to just find ways to be as competitive as possible. I know, obviously, we want to make sure that, you're not harming yourself by being too overly competitive. However, you want to stick, right? You want to stick the landing, whatever you say, you want it to resonate with the individuals that you're talking to. This, comes full circle. So that goes back to the research ahead of time, right? Maybe talking points, things in their organization. We can talk about this at a point too, but, looking at their mission and vision and value statement for their organization.
Oh, absolutely.
And saying like, man, I can really resonate to this. I'm going to make sure I work that in the conversation.
I have two questions that came up that I just noticed. So I'll address those now. Number one is going back to and then we'll finalize the elevator pitch conversation. But the second question is about elevator pitches, so that's good. How do you highlight a pharmacy rotation experiences? How do you highlight a pharmacy rotation experience that was virtual on your CV? Same way you would anything else. Definitely, I think highlighting, everything that you normally would, everything that you were able to do. And you do have to remember that in many cases, the world is changing right now, and, many things are moving virtual. So some of you, having that virtual experience is a positive thing rather than a negative thing. So look at it that way. But as far as how to present it on your CV, it would be the same exact way. There just wouldn't be like a physical location to it. But as far as, anything on your CV, as far as that goes, you're just highlighting accomplishments and what you did for them. So, well, you're highlighting what you did for them and focusing on accomplishments. So as long as you do that, you'll still be good. The second question is a really good one. How do we start the conversation and then segue to your elevator pitch? Do we wait for them to ask about ourselves? And that's a really great question. It's like the most awkward time is when you first go up to somebody or first join a room and it's like, oh, what do I do? So I think, going into that room, it really depends if it's just you or them. If it's just you and them, just kind of going in and asking them, starting out, just saying, you could briefly. Here's the other thing you need to remember. I'm kind of stopping myself. I'm thinking about these things as we're talking about them. Your elevator pitch doesn't necessarily have to be one full length thing. So hear me out on this. It might be, oh, hi, thanks so much for taking time out of the day. I'm Ryan Stelgaitis. I'm a P1 pharmacy student. And then they might say something. And then it might just, naturally come back to you. So your elevator pitch might not be this time when like you have the microphone and you're up on stage and you're the only one speaking. It might be back and forth. You're kind of giving that elevator pitch through conversation. So that's one thing to consider. But I think just starting it like a normal conversation and asking them how their day is going, thanking them at the beginning, like pre-thanking them, like, hey, I just want to thank you. Like, I know it's crazy right now, whatever you guys want to say, but thanking them and then asking them how their day is going so far. And then hopefully they would come back to you after that. So typically I wouldn't be too concerned about that because there is kind of a flow to these. But what I will tell you is that, what I have found is that, like I said, building relationships over Zoom is even harder. We all know that. So whatever you do, however the conversation does start, it needs to be that. It needs to be a conversation. So whatever you do, as far as segueing and everything else like that, it should feel like a natural conversation. So just asking them, if it started by asking them a question, how's the event been for you so far? That should hopefully get it kicked off in more of a conversational feel. So, and hopefully, like Justin said, hopefully you've done your research, you have things to talk about their organization. You might open up the conversation by saying, oh, it's so great that you guys are here. I'm so thankful you took the time out. I was really impressed by the fact that I saw you were doing X, Y, and Z. So then that leads the way for them to say, oh, that is really interesting. Yeah, we're just starting to do that, blah, blah, blah. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? So everything will kind of take its natural progression with that. But those are both great questions. And there's really no one answer to the second one, but just make it conversational and it should flow pretty well. What else? Anything else on the elevator pitch? We
not necessarily on the elevator pitch, but the one thing that I kind of want to piggyback off of is on the first question about conveying your virtual experiences, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that you all should know is this virtual rotation period that you're all in is a first. It's a first for you.
Yeah.
It's a first for the rotation experience that you're going through. Yeah. And some of these experiences have actually led to jobs. I don't know if you were in the I believe it was our afternoon analysis. We had a couple alumni come in and talk about how different pharmacy professions have been dealing with COVID in their workplace and their day-to-day operations. But one of our students last year, who graduated class of 2020, they talked about their experience in the final rotation of their P4 appies, where they were working, I believe, with the Poison Control Center, New Jersey Poison Control Center.
Yeah.
And through that experience, right, answering the phone calls, creating standard operating procedures, how to respond to crisis in real time. They were not only able to talk about the successes they've had, obviously with their in-person experiences, but also kind of talk about their successes virtually.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all of you are experiencing success virtually if you're doing a virtual rotation. It's great to show your flexibility and your adaptability through the ways that you're able to kind of overcome different challenges thrown at you. So, highlighting your virtual experience, I think, is a fantastic thing. Again, your experiences are unique and different based upon not all rotations are the same. Not all virtual experiences are the same either. So just highlighting the great things that you've done both in person and virtually is kind of how you want to present that portion of it. And again, going back to the second question is the conversational piece and, introducing yourself. What a great time it is to just saying, this is how I can overcome adversity, right? By being able to plug it into the conversation overall. So when you're thinking about your elevator pitch, think about, where you came from, the kind of a template that Ryan uses, where you are now and then how it started and, bringing it all back together. You can talk about,
makes sense,
where you are currently, how it's, working out, the things that you're doing, things that you're doing well.
There's major positive things that have come from these virtual rotations. So, I mean, as Justin mentioned, I mean, there's so many good things that you guys have gained from that. So as long as you're highlighting that and you're able to talk about it, I think you'll be good.
And you have to know every experience that you're doing sets you apart.
Yeah.
Right. You're unique as a person, as you are in the way you handle everything. A lot of the class experiences that you have, they're not going to differ from other pharmacy schools around the country. What makes or breaks you is your overall experiences, how you convey them, how they're shown both on paper being a resume, but also how you're talking about them in person. And it all comes, full circle. And again, this career fair and residency showcase isn't an interview.
Right.
It's a foot in the door.
Yeah.
And for our P1s that are in the audience, I do want to say there are different organizations that are going to be with us on Friday that they start kind of recruiting and identifying their future candidates when it comes to fellowships, when it comes to residencies, when it comes to community pharmacies, whatever is available. If your interest, it can start at your P1 year. There's plenty of students that might be joining us today that, for example, take someone from Walgreens. Walgreens will kind of want to keep you and take you and hold on to you for, as much time as they can before you graduate to say, this is our person. They're going to come with us when they graduate. They're going to be coming with us. Right. So these connections can start as early as your P1 year. Typically too, in the residency showcase and career fair, these are where these relationships are formed.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of take advantage of the opportunity that is going to be coming up on Friday.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, networking is all around us all the time, every day, everywhere. So this is just that chance, it means different things to different people, but this is your chance to really showcase what you got. As far as, Justin said, this isn't an interview. It's not. But many of the same kind of techniques and thought approaches can be applied to it. So for instance, in interviewing, we use a strategy called the STAR approach. For anyone that's heard my presentations or heard me speak on this, it's a helpful approach. It's for interviewing, it's referring to addressing the situation, task, action, and result. The reason I'm bringing that up now is in your conversations during this showcase, you can still utilize that approach to formulate good conversational stuff, right? So if you use the STAR approach and you always explain what was the situation or task, what action did you take? I'm holding up my hands here. You can't see it. 3 things: situation or task. It's really 4 things, but situation or task, action, result. If you focus on those things, you will always give a good answer to somebody. And not just a good answer, you will give a good statement to somebody. So don't even think about it as an interview answer. Think about it just as a statement about yourself. And I also want to, just let you guys know that I've been working with a lot of pharmacy students lately and a lot of pharmacy students over the years. And the one thing I have come to know is that there's a very how am I trying to say it? I mean, I think so many of the folks that I have met with have done so many great things, but they're scared that if they highlight them too much, they might be considered bragging. Now, I want to tell you that the majority of people that I've met with also, I don't think would ever be considered braggers. I haven't come across many people in the School of Pharmacy. There might have been a few along the way, but there's not typically too many people that really rub me the wrong way as like bragging in your face, like, oh, I can't believe you're talking about that. So the reason I'm saying it like this is I don't want you guys to be scared about highlighting your experiences, because as Justin mentioned, those are what set you apart. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is as he was talking about that, I started thinking more about what can make you guys stand apart. And I mention it to a lot of you when I meet with you, but it's the other things. It's not just the, IPPs and the appies. It's the leadership roles that you take on, the things that you do that go above and beyond just the typical day-to-day of the class, and then, going to your hospital rotation or whatever it is. So it's the different things that you guys do, the volunteer experiences. These are the things that you also have to integrate into your story, because it will make you stand out. And again, as you're integrating them into your story, if then you think about that approach that I just talked about, situation, task, action, result, and you're intertwining and using that, then you can make sure that you're really giving them good information. But never, never, never be afraid to, I always think it's crazy when somebody says, well, is it going to be, and I'm not making, if anybody on the call tonight thinks I'm making fun of them for being worried about this, I'm totally not, because it's the right thing to be concerned about this. But everyone's like, well, if I talk about this thing I did, won't they think I'm bragging? And it's like, no, like you've earned it. You guys have all earned it. And my response back to them is, since when did bragging become talking about factual things about yourself? Like there has to be some sort of line. Like I know people can be crazy, but I don't want you guys to be scared. Bragging can be a negative thing, right? Like I don't want to talk to somebody that's full of themselves and rubs me the wrong way, but you guys earn so much of what you do. And there are so many good students in this program. So you guys need to know that, and you do need to brag a little bit in a good way. All bragging isn't negative. So think about it the way I said it before, though. There are literal factual things about yourself that you have accomplished, that you have earned, but you need to publicize them to these folks that you'll be meeting with, because they don't know them about you. They don't know how important or how hard they were. So, I mentioned things like, I talk about specifics, right? I talk about cementing things in people's mind. So typically, and I'm sorry for the folks that didn't get to go this past time, or this upcoming time, the Give Kids the World, right? I always talk about that. So Give Kids the World is a leadership experience, but not only that, I tell people like, hey, you have to show them that 10 people go each semester. So if you were selected to go on this, not only is it something that can make you stand out because of its leadership qualities that it's given you, but you were only, 10 of 70 selected to go. That's pretty impressive right there. Like if I am an employer, an organization, a hospital, whatever it is, and I see somebody's accolades from the previous stuff, why would I not think that they're going to be awesome for me? So it makes my decision so much easier. So make their decision easy. Promote those things about yourself. I see a question here. Last project on the CV dates back to 2019. How do you compensate for the 2020 gap of not accomplishing? Okay. So basically saying that there's a time span on your CV that there's a gap. Right now, for you folks, I'm not sure what year this person is specifically, but you're a student right now, so you have to highlight the things that you have done. And I always say you can't focus on the past and compensating this and that. You have to take it from here and move forward. So if right now whatever you have done is what you've done, that's what you highlight. So don't even worry about well, there's this little small gap. Well, you're a student right now and you're doing your thing, right? You've done a bunch of stuff. So number one, don't worry about that. And number two, you have to highlight what you've done. And if there is a concern though, if you feel to yourself, hey, I'm lacking in a certain area, find a way to get involved in something that can fill in that area, fill in that gap. But you need to be honest with yourself. And if there is a gap right now, you're not going to fix it between, now and Friday by magically doing something with your CV. But what I can tell you is, just from my perspective of working with people, don't even look at it like that. Like, don't even look at it as something's missing or there's a gap. It is what it is. You highlight everything that you've done. And if you highlight all the things that you've done from that time period and before, it's going to be fine. They're not even going to worry about it. So worry about what you do have. Don't worry about what you don't have. But think about how you can fill in those gaps. What other questions do we have? I think that's the majority. I'm just trying to look at my list. What else do you want me to talk about, Justin? I talked about CVs. We talked about navigating like the logistics, talked about elevator pitch. We talked about contact info. What else should we cover?
We're kind of coming to the conclusion. I mean,
Doing
I guess we can just, it would be appropriate. I think we could just talk about follow-up, how to follow up maybe. What are the things to say? So Ryan, you can take it away with your expertise and I can kind of chime in on my thoughts on how to follow up with an organization if you've had a good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a typical kind of format that I use for what I would call thank you emails. It's just a follow-up email. And it's, you got to change it up for what you want to do, but a very typical, easy format to follow is, and it also doesn't need to be all that long. And it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, but sometimes it doesn't need to be a crazy length follow-up. So you want to thank them once again for taking the time, right? So that's, pretty typical. You want to thank them again. You want to hopefully mention something that was discussed during your conversation or during the presentation. So that means that you would have had to have been taking notes or something along those lines. So you want to thank them once again. You want to mention something to spark their interest, to say, wow, they were paying attention. Then you want to reiterate your interest in their organization, their program, whatever it is. And you might want to showcase a couple things right there. So, and this isn't going to be a whole letter, but when you reiterate your interest, you mention again why you're a great fit, and you might only mention one or two things, but you're going to say, again, I'm really interested in this. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm a great fit because, and you might want to add in one of those standout points. And then you just thank them one last time and it's done. And you might, if the conversation went well enough, you attach your CV. But I think keeping it really basic, showing connection to them, reminding them of your interests and how you stand out is always a good way to look at it. And then you just tailor it the way you want to, you add a couple sentences here and there, but that simple breakdown should really help you guys out.
Yeah, everything Ryan said is exactly how you should do it. And it's important too. What I'd recommend, again, you want to collect the emails of the individuals that are in the room, right? I provided, at least in the list that I've given you, what main person of contact said they would be there. And if there's multiple, they're all in.
That's like gold, guys. You don't even understand. Having the contact information is like gold. So, that's why I didn't mention anything about it at first, because I didn't know if you were giving all of it. But the fact that you guys have this, I don't want to overwhelm them or you or anything, but if you meet with somebody, you should definitely be finding a way to follow up with them.
Yeah, and it's okay to ask, especially a virtual setting. Hey, do you mind if I get your email? Do you mind if I get the best place to reach you at? Those are the little things, again, that then ball's in your court. You have to act upon it. You can't just say, okay, I have this, now what?
And then just making sure also, as I'm thinking about that, everyone that you meet with on this day, you should go back and connect with on LinkedIn. And again, that assumes you have a LinkedIn profile. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you need to make one. But sending a connection via LinkedIn after you meet them. Everyone I meet and do business with in a way, I connect with on LinkedIn. I want to make sure I know them, and always send a personalized message too. So that thank you note that we just talked about, that could be your LinkedIn invite, right? You could say, hey, thanks so much for taking the time out at the Career Fair Residency Showcase. I enjoyed meeting with you. And then you say all those things that I said. And the last part is, I want to stay connected with you on LinkedIn. So it's a way to build that, network for yourself. And then when P3, P4 year comes around and you're applying to different things and you click on LinkedIn on that company and you see that you know someone there and it's from Career Fair Residency Showcase, you're going to be thanking yourself. So do those little things along the way now, and it's going to be really great for you.
Yeah, that's well said. Everything's right there with that you need. So again, we kind of want to open it up to you. What do you want to hear about? Ryan mentioned everything that we've been talking about. I mentioned in the beginning too the format and the structure, at least of our career fair and residency showcase. Opportunities are available for all years, all classes. It's not just the P4s, though. A lot of our organizations will be offering and tailoring their day to the P4 students. There's still ways for you to make the positive connections that you need to in order to be someone in their mindset going forward for future consideration. So what questions? What do you have? We would like to hear.
We silence them.
And you can challenge us too. If you have any tough, difficult questions, we're more than welcome to handle those. If you have questions about logistics of the day, if something hasn't been clear, you won't really know the experience until you log in and sign up for it. It's not as simple as walking in and seeing all the booths that we have around, and the flyers and the pamphlets and the little take-home prizes that some tables will be distributing. It's different. That's kind of gone this year. It's kind of, the onus is a lot more on you to make those intentional connections than us kind of forcing you to it by providing you a space to do so in the past. So even if there's logistic questions, we're more than happy to kind of answer everything.
Okay. Hi, Justin, Puma.
Hello. Hi, Puma.
So once we log in on Friday, like what should we expect? You mentioned something about the waiting room. Is that where we'll be able to choose where we want to go?
Yes. So the way it's going to work, right, is we'll have you can check in as early as you want. So we'll open student rooms, company, everything will be open at 9, right? 10 o'clock we'll release you, the students, to the companies and the organizations. You're kind of gonna hurt yourself if you try to jump the gun and go into a room when a company's not prepared. It's not a good look, right? Could you? Sure. Should you? Don't. So the way it's gonna work is, what I'm gonna do is, again, encourage everybody to use their single sign-on. I'm going to pre-assign breakout rooms. So when you log in theory, unless Zoom is having some issues, in theory, you should join into the student waiting room. What that student waiting room is we'll present a screen that will highlight all the companies that have checked in, so you'll know who's there for the day and who's checked in at ahead of time. So that way you'll know that if the company that you really wanted to meet with ends up actually showing up, if they checked in on time, etc. So during that lobby, that's where you can ask. Trish will be the main point of contact for that lobby. That's where you can ask her a couple questions, logistic questions. You can help answer those. I'll be available. I can come in and answer any questions and comments and concerns that you might have. But once you're in that breakout room, you as the participant have the ability to then, when it's time, jump to any room of your leisure. So if you're not sure where to go or where to start, again, we're starting feature presentations beginning at 10:15 a.m. The room for that will be open at 10 a.m. So if you want to come in and that's where you want to start, that's a great place to begin the proceedings of your day. Does that answer your question, Puma? You'll kind of be pre-assigned. Yes. Yep, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You'll kind of be you'll should be pre-assigned. If you don't, you come in. We'll take care of you. We'll put you in the student room in the meantime. But once the event actually starts, like say if you want to join in and you're not available to make the morning, you're coming in at 11 a.m. Go ahead. You don't have to come into the student room at all. You can just go ahead and tackle the day as appropriate by going to any of the organizations that you want to. What I will say is if you've been to our physical career fair and residency showcase, usually our P4s get like a gold star on their name badge, for example. We're going to be doing something similar to the way we want our P4s to present themselves. So that way, for our P1s and P3s, a company will be able to identify which student is which cohort. Meaning for your P4, I can see your P4. So we've already kind of come up with a couple ideas of how to do that. Most likely you'll be with renaming yourself. So Michelle, for example, could be like Michelle or P4 Michelle, and then her name would be projected, right? So those are kind of the ways that it's going to be distinguished a little bit, but most of the time you'll be able to join the room. You'll kind of be out in the open with everybody else.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. What other questions do you guys have? Something about logistics?
I had one come to me here. Are there any conversation topics you would definitely recommend not to talk about? Politics, and especially being that it's Friday after the election. Oh man, who the heck knows Or in another direction, how would you salvage a dying conversation? Those are phenomenal questions, both very hard to answer. So you were going in the direction of trying to stump Justin and myself, I think. Conversations to definitely not to recommend to talk about, like I said, and I mean it. I mean, anything that could be, touchy, politics, anything like that. And it's going on in the world right now. So it could come up somehow, if you're talking about your work with as Justin mentioned, the poison control hotline, and the fact that you were dealing with the COVID cases via that. I ended up talking to a lot of students that did that, and they weren't necessarily dealing with poisons. They were dealing with COVID. And then you're talking about COVID, and then all of a sudden you're talking about politics. And then the next thing you know, you're in a full political debate with this person, and it's gone off the track. So you don't want that. So, I mean, I think as far as what not to talk about, just anything that can go in a negative direction. So you never want to, and this is big and small. So politics is big, that could be big negative, and a smaller negative could be like, don't talk about something on your CV or you shouldn't have it on your CV if this is the case, but like, don't bring something up about that you don't fully want to discuss. Like if you talk about your research from your last year of undergrad and you don't have good knowledge about it anymore and you can't fully discuss it, don't talk about that. So those are really good questions. And how to salvage a dying conversation. Wow, that is a phenomenal question. A question that people typically don't think about. Sometimes, I guess, number one, a dying conversation can't be salvaged. It might mean that person is just tired from talking, and maybe it's best that you give them a break at that point. And maybe I shouldn't have led with that because I don't want you guys just giving up on conversations, but like, you do need to play it by ear. And if you feel that, the conversation is not going too well because they're kind of petering out a little bit, then, maybe just, following up with them via email would be better. But as far as salvaging a dying conversation, in other ways, it would be just finding good things that you can talk about, bringing up points about yourself that hopefully connect with that company or organization, things that you can bring up from your past experience that will hopefully allow them to talk about something at their organization. Alternatively, how to salvage a dying conversation would be asking them questions, flip the table on them. And typically it's not about grilling them. It's just say, hey, I'd love to hear more about you. And that sounds so simple, right? But I'm in the hiring process right now for our office. So I conducted a ton of interviews, and the best question, I won't say the most interesting, but the best question I got was when the candidate was like, how is everything going in your world? And can you tell me about, what's going on with you right now? And I was like, wow, well, okay. Now that you've asked, I will tell you about it. So like, there are ways to salvage it. Like just turn it into a conversation, ask them a question, see where it goes. If it doesn't go anywhere, then it's like, all right, this is over. And I did my best. But those are great questions. So that was one that just came in.
Yeah, I have a few follow-ups to that too. With the first one, well, I might as well address the dying question first. So again, Ryan had mentioned it too. It's okay to prepare questions.
You should.
A couple questions for the organizations that you want to go to, right? Again, preparation, research. We provided some available resources. A lot of the organization lists that I did send you, they provided company brochures, right, on those specific opportunities that they have available. But they also provided website links. Click around the website, go explore.
And deep clicks. I know that sounds weird, sorry. But what I mean by that is like, you can't just go on to their homepage, their first page. Like you need to click deeper, like literally I click to this page and then I'm on a sub page and I'm going to find this information, because guess what? That's going to impress them. Like when somebody brings up, again, I go back to the interviews I'm conducting right now. Somebody brought up something that I know is buried in our website. Like I know where it is and it's hard for me to find. So the fact that they brought it up impressed me. So doing your research in that vein can be very important.
Yeah, of course. You can even do research on who you're interviewing with, who you're going to be connecting with.
Yeah.
Right. If that's available to you ahead of time, know what their role, their function, their responsibilities are.
Yeah.
It's always a helpful thing to go in so you understand, what questions they might be coming from. They might not be a pharmacist, right, at all, but they're going to be a recruiter for the company.
Right.
You have to kind of know your audience of, who you're going to
And
be talking to.
and
then,
knowing them, it
go ahead,
just
Ryan.
goes back to, number one, that having that contact info is gold because you have their name and you can look them up on LinkedIn. And, I know that's why you're bringing it up, to save a dying conversation, is hopefully you've done research on them, you've learned something about them, and you could say, hey, tell me about your experience at, Ohio University when you were in pharmacy school there, whatever it is. And they're going to be like, oh, like you did your research on me. So, definitely a very good point.
Yep. And another thing I want to go back to, the first question that was asked is, what not to ask, right? What are some things to avoid? You never want to slander another individual, slander some of your past experiences with saying, the reason why I didn't do better on this was because of XYZ, or, the people that I worked with weren't great, so blah, blah, blah. You want to avoid talking negatively as much as possible, right? If the conversation goes that way, find a way to deflect back into a positive conversation sphere, but you don't want to ever badmouth another coworker. Look, even if you haven't had the best of times at the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, we get it. But just going in and slandering, it's going to kind of turn off the potential individuals that you're talking with and say, wow, they're talking about this right now. What are they going to say if they come here and they're not enjoying their experience? So,
Right.
there's things that you need to tiptoe around. Definitely slander, bad mouthing, bringing up negatives, something that you do want to try to avoid at all costs.
Yeah. Good point. I didn't even think to mention that because it's so outlandish to me. But no, it's typically the first thing that people bring up is you never talk bad about anything, really. I mean, it's not a good look. Positivity is the way to go at all costs. And just kind of on that, I would just say be yourselves. I think these people are going to be talking to so many people that day, hopefully, and just over time, they talk to a lot of people. And I think for many of you, like I said, I speak with so many of you, and many of you have great personalities that I think sometimes you don't let come through in these sort of opportunities. And it might be nerves. It could be many different things, but find a way to fight through that. And I always also say that if you're nervous about something like this, that's okay. Everyone else is too. It means that you care about it. It means that you want to do well. So if you channel that into excitement and passion about the program, the organization, whatever it is, it typically works out very well. And, sometimes I've even gone as far to say, and I know nobody asked about this, but about nerves, being open and honest about it. And, if you are a really nervous person, like I know there are some people that are very nervous and it comes through, like it's visible. And I want to speak to those people too. And I want you to know that that's okay. You do need to find a way to get through it. But one of the strategies that I've implemented in the past is, again, being open and honest about it. So you go into that room and you say, well, thank you so much for coming out. I do want to say I'm a little bit nervous today because I'm so excited about this opportunity. And I know it's such a great fit for me that I really want to have a great conversation with you. So like, you've broken the ice a little bit. You've let them know that you're nervous. You've gotten that off your chest. So it's like, there are ways to handle it. So I just want to mention that because I do think that that's one thing that can get in people's way when it comes to these. And I don't want that because you guys have a lot to offer, and nerves can certainly get in the way of marketing yourself.
Yeah, that's well said. Any other questions from our audience? Anything that might have come up? I don't know if you see anything in your chat, Ryan. I don't see anything directly messaged to me.
Nothing else that I didn't address.
Just a quick question, if it was okay.
Yeah.
Sure is.
So I actually have class, unfortunately, I believe from 10:30 to 12:30. Do you think I'll be missing anything vital, or is there like a key time that, we should be checking in if we don't want to stay the whole time?
So I can't say that, these portions are more important than the others. Again, companies will be available from 10 to 2. So if your time constraint is restricted, right? I've had people email me and say, oh, I work on Fridays, right? Should I get coverage for my shift? I'm not going to advise you on what to do, but just know if your time is more limited than what other people might have the opportunity to have, that is when you need to be more strategic on who you meet and when you meet. Some of the things that you definitively will miss is the presentations, the feature presentations, because those are kind of slotted into times. So unfortunately, the way we had to conduct it is our career and fellowship opportunities are more in the beginning of the day, where our residency opportunities are more in the latter half. So by the time you end class, for example, that is when residencies are taking place. If it begins at, you said 10:30, the beginning,
Yeah,
the first,
10:35 to 12:35.
perfect,
I
first
tried to get out of
organization,
class, but it didn't work.
the first organization that we are going to be having is going to be a career opportunity. So I believe I sent that out to you. It should be like 95% sure it's, yeah, the first opportunity is going to begin at 10:15. That's going to be CBS Health. So if you wanted, if you're interested in maybe a community pharmacy, for example, like maybe that's the one you want to go to, right? You may want to make sure that before your class, you're spending the first moments. So that presentation will go from 10:15 to 10:25. Again, they're 10-minute presentations with 5-minute buffers afterwards. So that might be an opportunity you definitely want to stop in for, but afterwards you should be strategic on who you want to meet with after.
It is cool though that with Zoom and being virtual that you can literally take it up to like the minute and do that thing right before class if you needed to. So it is really about being strategic and making the most of your time. So I think that pre-research comes into play, and it is what it is. That's the time constraint.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's some things that could have been rearranged, but this data has been pretty permanent for a while. So if you do, again, for any of you that are in here, for any of you that are going to be listening on this recording, like if you have to miss for a period of time, depending on what it is, you have to make those adjustments on your own, right?
Yeah.
We're providing this to you. Again, the ball is in your court to do something with it. But I will say that, there might be other experiences. So for example, you might really enjoy the conversation that you're having with a company. You might be with only like 1 or 2 or 3 companies for the entire time during the career fair and residency showcase, right? So it's not definite that you're going to be going to.
Well, and that's the other thing. That's a really good point, that you might actually have to do some like on the fly, strategery, if you will. You might have, if you're in a conversation and it's going really well and you have other people that you thought you were going to drop into the room, you might need to quickly think in the back of your head, hey, maybe it's more worthwhile if I sit here one-on-one with this person and keep this really good conversation going. So just things to think about.
And in this environment too, a little piece of advice is it's okay to travel with a friend, right? If normally in the career fair residency showcase, when it's in person, you might walk around with your group of friends and visit all the tables at the same time. You can do that virtually.
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point.
This is a first impression opportunity to have with companies and organizations. This is not a definitive interview, though it might lead to it. But in the process, if you don't want to traverse this alone, coordinate with other classmates, coordinate with people that you're comfortable with or have same career aspirations that you do, so that way you can go through it together. Bring a friend, right? That's kind of the cliche, like bring a friend. Just do it. It's okay to travel in pairs or even small groups as you go through the experience. I wouldn't recommend too large of a group because otherwise you get swallowed up in the amount of people that are going to be there at one time. But find what makes this the most comfortable experience for you.
Yeah. Great points. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I had.
Yeah, likewise here. All right, no other questions that I see. Ryan, any final parting words or thoughts that you want to kind of leave the students with before Friday?
Yeah, there's a lot running through my head, Justin. Be yourself. I always say to people that above all else, and again, as we mentioned, this isn't an interview, but let's just pretend for a minute. Typically when somebody interviews you, they already know you can do the job. They want to see you. They want to know who you are. I still consider it the same way in here. You need to show them who you are, but one of the most important things becomes personality and how you connect with them. So just be yourself, have a really good conversation, prepare beforehand so you don't have to worry about that stuff on the day of the fair or during it. Just have everything mapped out really nicely. Have your materials in front of you available because you can. Don't overwhelm yourself. Take notes when you can. Jot down things of interest from each presentation and each place that you go and visit, so that you can mention those in your follow-ups. And yeah, as Justin mentioned before, have questions prepared. Have them ready. And have cheat a little bit. You can have points about yourself. Have some points ready about yourself. Don't write things out, as I said, but like, if you're one of the people that sometimes you're like, oh man, sometimes I forget like what I want to mention about myself. well, hopefully we can move past that. But if you are like that, hey, it's virtual. You have the opportunity to, you're not even going to see this, but I have my notepad here. I just laid it on my keyboard and now I have all my notes right in front of me. So like, help yourself out. You know, if there are some key things that you want to remember to mention to somebody, bullet point them out on a sheet in front of you, and just try not to lose, you know, the attention to hear. And just finally, you know, it's Zoom can be hard, as I mentioned, to connect with people. So use the camera and Zoom to your advantage. So you guys will notice me, and I've been, you know, I kind of just like live in Zoom now. So I literally like, and I'm not recommending you do all the things I do, but I try to make it almost feel like I'm there with them. So I use my hand gestures a lot. Like when I tell people like, oh, you're talking about something that's this big, it should be this big. You know, I'm talking about like literally using the camera. I know that this sounds weird, but you have to. Like this is the way that it is right now. So things like leaning in a little bit and, you know, looking directly at like right now I'm looking at myself talking, but if I look directly at the camera, it looks like I'm looking at you. So there's a lot of little different like intricacies that, you know, you might not implement when you're taking classes via Zoom, but now that you're in here doing it this way, you have to. So I've even tried to change the way that I do things, because for anybody that has seen me in person present, I'm a maniac sometimes. I'm all over the room. I'm going all these different places, and guess what? I can't do that right now. So I try to do it this way, and I try to, you know, really maintain my connection with the viewer. So you guys have to do the same. So that's what I'll say. And you know, last but not least, good luck. You guys will all do great.
Awesome. So if you guys can just, you know, let's give Ryan some thank yous in the chats. I thought this was an awesome presentation. Again, this is recorded, so for anybody that's going to be listening in post, you know, heed our advice, right? This is all the information that we wanted to provide to you, and, you know, take it and do what you will, but hopefully the best outcome possible is going to be there for you. So Ryan, thank you so much. We appreciate the time that you dedicated tonight. For everybody,
Absolutely.
have a wonderful Friday and career fair and residency showcase experience. This is our 6th year, first year doing it virtually. So we'll see how it turns out. But I know that we're doing everything that we can to make the transition easy for everybody.
Awesome. Good luck, everyone. And I will talk to you all soon. Have a good night.